after midnight here, so very rarely am I able to join in. But yeah, we did meet. I don't know how many months ago now, but it's been months.
I am remembering now that I hear her voice, and I think I probably mentioned Chang Lu to you. A
Yes.
have you managed to cross paths with her?
Not as yet, no. I did leave her a message on the forum, but I haven't heard back.
I don't know if she's checking the forum these days. I've lost touch with her for the last year and a half or more, actually. But she's a terrific person, a great resource. Um, I continue to recommend her highly and tell her she never calls, she never writes. All right, well, welcome to the chapter leaders meeting. Who has something to discuss? Saad, can you tell us a little bit more about your activities? Is there these days a Singapore chapter?
Yes. Um, we've been sort of bumbling along in our befuddled kind of way, but um, so I have to sort of reestablish the context. I run a little volunteer group, and we operate once a week out of a public library in Singapore. Um, and we do co-creation of assistive devices. And it's not just about prosthesis and prosthetics, but also just, anything that would help the activities of daily living. And we try and bring caregivers and persons with disabilities into the design process. And the library is equipped with a makerspace with 3D printers, laser cutters, and other fun things that you can actually fabricate with. So we try and engage people in the co-creation process using all of these devices or none of these devices, whatever is applicable to trying to address the need that is being expressed. So it's like a design thinking, participatory design kind of session every Sunday. And there's a bunch of crazy volunteers who have a wide range of skills who bring their hearts and minds to the table, and we try and find ways to match them. Um,
Fantastic.
so so we try and do this in a sustainable way without burning out. And that's why it's once a week right now. But it's incredibly rewarding work.
Well, that's great. I've forgotten. Do you have a day job?
Yes, I do. And so do most of the other volunteers who come in on Sundays. So it's quite a wide, diverse bunch of people. My background is in tech. I run a small tech company. Uh, and we've got everybody from like finance people to photovoltaics engineers to occupational therapists, uh,
Hmm.
and every Sunday is different. We're not, we have no idea what we're getting ourselves into. So depending on who shows up,
Yeah,
we pick up projects and then move them along.
that really sounds like a really great model. How many people show up? I'm sure it varies, but what's
So we, because the library facilitates the sign up process, and it's free for anybody to participate, we have to cap the number. So we each Sunday session is capped at 10, but that's not counting people who've already been to one of our sessions in the past. So
nice?
if you've attended 3 of our Sunday sessions, you automatically become a volunteer. And you pick up a project and then you see it through with as many people as you can.
That's fantastic. You know, you're at the cutting edge of where we are trying to get. You're doing assistive technologies. Uh, you're meeting with people in person and you're doing the work. I don't know if you know, but we got uh, a significant grant recently, and we're now sort of thinking about what our priorities are. But among them are we are revamping our map of chapters, and I noticed that you're not on our map of chapters,
Y-
and we are um, really trying to figure out how to get more of our community involved in assistive technologies, often 3D printed assistive technologies, more generally than just, the hands and arms that we're famous for. Um, and I wonder if you have any thoughts about how we can leverage what you're doing to get the word out and sort of begin this transition.
I mean, it's a difficult one because you've got a community that is spread across the planet, and the issues that we're trying to deal with is to create an inclusive space within the library and the makerspace. And I think with your perspective, that's on a global scale. So um, it's that much harder. So I don't have a constructive suggestion straight away, but
Sorry.
I think looking at how some of the other global communities that are oriented around open hardware or open source, how they are organized, I think that might be a good model to look at.
Sure.
Also part of a group called the Open Science Hardware community.
I know that.
And
Great.
oh, okay. And GOSH, which is a brilliant acronym, GOSH has similar challenges. And they also have a forum where it brings together quite a lot of people around science. But the challenge remains, how do we engage people in a meaningful way? So what works for GOSH is that they try and have an annual gathering or an annual meetup. And that goes a long way in sort of keeping everybody connected. So I'm not
Interesting.
sure if that's something you want to consider.
You know, it it is. It is. We've done about four e-NABLE cons over the years. The first one was quite a big event and it really put us on the map. Then there were a number of smaller ones and then it sort of petered out. Um, as you know, an event like that takes a great deal of planning. And what we're focusing on right now is sort of repositioning ourselves, but you're quite right. That might be the right way to sort of rebrand and reinitiate um, e-NABLE for the mid 2020s. I think that's a great idea. And here is Ian pointing out
I was just
there.
going to ask what your favorite repositories for open assistive technology are. Beyond e-NABLE, we use Makers Making Change and the Illinois Assistive Technology Program a lot. I'm looking through the GOSH's site, see if they have any repository links. But I'm wondering where you find your stuff beyond the hub.
Um, uh, so we've put together uh, a rolling list, a collection of assistive devices, and we tried to do this on our own with our own website, but documenting things on our own is always much harder than actually doing things. Um, but I've put together a list on printables.com. So
Cool.
it's a collection,
Cool. Yeah,
and
I'd love to see that.
I'll share that in the
We would
chat in a
use it.
second. Okay. And the collection feature on printables, I think, is quite nice because the volunteers are able, I mean, within our group, we're able to just add on to the collection. I think there is something similar with Thingiverse, but not as easy to use. So I really like the way Printables has developed their platform. They also have a Printables World, which is a map. And I think that might be a good example to look at.
This is great,
For,
so great that you're sharing and great that these exist.
Yeah, super cool.
so you'll see on the collection there that some of the things that I've uploaded with my
Yep.
name on them, but they're not entirely my designs.
Yep.
Some of the volunteers are like, why don't you just upload
Sure.
it? So we go ahead and do that wherever possible. But it's a collection. So there are designs by other people, but each thing that's on the list was either used as a reference for somebody else's problem expression, or actually printed and uh, given to somebody.
Yeah, it's actually a nice collection. Well, so Ian, we have to figure this out.
I know.
We've got these, I mean, on the one hand, it's all out there, it's all available. On the other hand, curated collections are pretty interesting. And okay, well, we'll have to think about this. One thing we are doing, Saad, and you might be able to help with, is we have resolved just in the last few weeks to reassess what chapters are alive and well. And I'm sure Sarah is making notes about Singapore. You are alive and well, and yet you're not on the map. And then to create a new version of the map, which will have basically two different views. One will be of chapters, but the other will be of, call them e-NABLE success stories from chapters all over the world. And what is your practice when you have a success, when you've done one of these things? Do you use social media? Do you boast your success? Do you publish little stories?
Yes and no. Again, it's difficult. We did have an intern who was motivated to do social media for a few weeks, and so we've got a couple of posts that I'm proud to point out and say, yeah, look, we've got some posts on Instagram that we're not too embarrassed about, so you can see
Yeah,
those.
interesting.
So yeah, Instagram seems to be the one that appeals to the Singapore audience, and a lot of people find their information about whether or not they want to participate by checking Instagram. Twitter or X is not a thing in Singapore. Nobody really follows it here, and so nobody posts on it. But Instagram seems to be the easiest to sort of tag other people
Sure.
and make them feel included.
Well, I have found you on Instagram. I'm following you now. I'm really not an Instagrammer. Um, but is that the right place to see these cases, or should I look at Salvage Garden Makerspace? There we go. Did we lose Sod? No, maybe.
It looks like he's further.
Oh no.
Yes, okay. So I'm going to share my screen, or Sod,
Yeah.
why don't you share your screen and just show us some of these cases?
For the Instagram. Oh yeah, sure.
Here's the link I found. And I see you've got, interesting. So this is also, oh, wow, this is also going to be so here is the Salvage Garden Makerspace, and I see you have what I'm guessing are sub-collections, inclusive games, hearables. Now, have you created each of these, or these are other things?
So these are collections of Insta stories that are relevant. So they're kind of like a bunch of hashtags of posts that were done. So we create these as and when there's a theme emerges in our posts.
Okay, so these are created by you.
Yeah.
And if, for example, if I click on Braille Wrap, I see they're basically playing the role of hashtags. They
Yeah.
pull together things which were all created by you, or are just things that you've tagged?
No, these are all posts that are created by us.
May I say, this is a great example of what we really need to know much more about. These are lovely.
So
Okay.
wherever
Space looks
possible,
awesome.
the library is brilliant. Yes. This particular video is outside in an event, but the library is at this particular branch of the library is still very new. We've only been there for a year when they first opened.
Okay. This is my continuing education program. Ian and Sarah, jump in if I'm hijacking the program, but this is really very interesting to me. So here is your Careables collection. And well, what does this one do? Can you guess the function? Look what you've done here. Okay. Wow. Nice.
So that was actually from Makers Making Change design.
Okay, but you have okay, now if I wanted to embed this on the big map to enable the future, is that possible?
Yeah, each of these stories should provide a link. So you should be able to, yeah, the way that you're able to share it to other people on Instagram, you'll be able to get a link to each of these stories.
Okay, so here I am. First I'm looking at, okay, but you have to be logged in.
Yeah, Instagram started doing this very annoying thing, and it's trying to get more people onto their platform, I suppose.
Well, let's see. What we are beginning to do is we're thinking that we're going to use, and maybe you tell me this is wrong, that we're going to use Facebook as sort of the launch, the portal for putting new posts into the big map. So here I am. So that's not going to do it either. If it's not showing here, it's not going to show on the map either.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're trying to do, but Instagram and Facebook are two separate platforms, so something that it wouldn't show in Facebook. Instagram wouldn't
Well,
play it in Facebook.
I'm validating that, but
Yeah.
some Facebook posts are public and can be shared that way. Are all Instagram posts you must be logged in to see? You're on mute, Sod.
I'm not sure. I think yes.
Okay. Then here's another question for you. Oh, and are you able to download these? Well, you uploaded them, so you must have them locally as well.
Yes. We can, yeah. What I can do is maybe put these together as like a Google Photos album, and I can share that, and then that will be publicly visible. So as long as you have the link, you should be able to see it without signing in to Google. That help?
Sure. Don't do it yet. I'm really trying to understand the scope of the problem, because I'll be meeting later this week with the person trying to figure out how we're going to do this. So this is a really good case in point. So how many of these, I mean, every one of these that I've seen, well, so now here are some things from Fab 23 Bhutan. Oh, you got to go to Fab 23 Bhutan.
Yes.
That was the one I really thought I would go to, but somehow my life took a different turn. So this is a bunch of really interesting stuff. Greenfest, Impact Fest highlights. And each of these clips can exist in multiple collections, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's I think differences between what is a Facebook post and what is a Facebook story. And the stories usually are these tiny little videos that sort of look like TikToks. And Instagram posts are just these static things that appear in the grid at the bottom. So if these posts were shared like you're seeing now in video format, like a story, then you can collect these stories in each of those labels that you're exploring right now.
Sure.
So it depends on the format when it was originally uploaded.
And is there so to create Facebook stories, which are similar in format to this, does one upload the video afresh, or are you saying that there's some sort of linkage between an Instagram turning an Instagram post into a Facebook story?
Yeah, I think that it should be possible to turn a bunch of posts into story, but I'm not exactly sure how that works, the mechanics of it, but it should be possible.
You're in good company. Um, okay, and presumably it's the owner who can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it would probably require for us to then say something like this. Now, if I'm logged into Instagram, well, clearly I can see them and I can share them. Let's just see. But they get shared only with other Instagram users because that's the way these sons of guns have structured the world. But you could do something. Would you mind sharing your screen and just, since you're the owner, helping us see I love these things you've created. What it looks like when you poke around looking to see if you can make a story.
Sure. I think, however, that might require two things. I think it's different on the app. The ability to create stories, you need to use the app on the mobile device to do it. Even if you're signed in on the web interface, there's a limited amount of functionality that Instagram offers.
And I'm not signed in, and right now I can scroll through a little bit of it before it tells me I have to log in. So I can, like, if you sent me a direct link to one post, I can see that one post without being logged in. But I can scroll through the top little bit of your page, and then eventually it says, please log in to see more.
Okay, but we're going to want to be able to slice and dice individual posts. And your experience, Ian, is on your computer or on your...
That was on the computer that I was trying, yeah.
Right. So I'm looking to see if I have the Instagram app. I do.
We have this question too, though, about like where is the free space in social media today? And it's also like where are the eyeballs? You kind of got to chase like the two axis is like where do we have control and freedom and where are there people?
Well, and what's the answer, smart guy?
So I don't have an answer, but for our students, it's Instagram and TikTok. We'll see how much longer, but right now we're putting a lot of our stuff on Instagram because that's where our students are. But personally, I deleted my Facebook a couple years ago, and I use Reddit communities a lot because they are open and indexed, and I can find useful information for projects there.
So I'm trying to put together a workflow by which, with permission from the creators, we can harvest all sorts of gems like what Saad has shown us and make them visible on a neutral e-NABLE platform. Let me just give you a glimpse of what the
so for your use case, I don't hate Reddit. I don't know, Saad, what do you think?
I have no problem with any of these things. I think all of them seem to work for the tribes that occupy them, but we're interested in going beyond the tribe that that particular tribe was with some of this content.
Yeah, I think it's each platform tries to
I know they do. That doesn't mean I have to cooperate.
Yeah, but there are always ways around it.
Well, okay. So here we are, and by the way, this is So this is your planet and mine. And this one is about eco-restoration success stories, but this is the kind of thing we're trying to do. These happen to be focusing on people right now, but here's a bunch of other things.
So you would have this would aggregate links. So these would link out to that other platform from a map interface?
Yes, from here, you can go to the original source, but I would really, but I don't want people to have to log in order to see the content. So here's a video and a blurb, which would be, and this is visible to anyone who goes to the big map to save the future. A link to which is coming into the chat for you also, just so you can see what we're talking about. We're now re-engineering this with hopefully a framework that can have an e-NABLE collection as well as an eco-restoration collection. But we're also trying to come up with a workflow that will allow us to harvest 10 years of e-NABLE posts, which were mostly on Facebook. When I was paying attention, Facebook was sort of the common denominator. But since then, Instagram and TikTok. And it's a daunting task. But Saad says there's always a way around it. And Saad, I'm wondering what you can advise us about this way around it.
So the Facebook will always try and increase the gap, right? So they will try and make it harder and it's always to make it feel like theirs is the best and the easiest and the coolest and the most awesome. So that's sort of an illusion. I still have the content. I took the pictures and I'm more than happy to re-upload them and make them available in a different format. Not everybody is in that position to be able to do that. So I think just encouraging people and making it easier for them to reshare is always a good idea. So instead of trying to find ways to maybe harvest or extract from Facebook, because that's going up against, because Facebook owns it, it's probably going to cause more hassles than solve. I think it's better just to go to the author.
Well, that's interesting because we had talked about creating our own little authoring platform. And you suggest that we might be able to, since Facebook is perfectly happy to have people facilitate posts into Facebook. But then you're developing your own little authoring tool and it gets complicated. Okay, I think we've identified one of the challenges. I don't think we've solved it right now. I did hear you say that you'd be quite happy to help us pilot this and that your content, which is already nicely produced and modular, is available to us for this. Do you have, often our goal is to say, now Singapore is a city-state, so everything is in cities, but in most countries, we'd like to be able to say, here in Toulouse, e-NABLE France has done so-and-so for this person. So simply giving us the videos in general is not going to be the complete answer. We're going to at least need a little bit of geography in order to put it the right place on the map. And even in Singapore, there probably are spatial locations for the recipients. Do you have videos that show, satisfied customers?
We've been encouraging people to contribute, but not so much. So most of the videos are of us doing things in our space or on road shows or outside events. So people are still quite shy to and we're dealing with people who are already quite selective about talking about their disability. and trying to create a space to make them feel comfortable. That's what we want to try and encourage. So not exactly yet,
Yeah.
but we're getting there. Singapore, the conversation is more around the culture. China, what I find myself doing more most Sundays is just holding space for people to be okay to talk about
That's
caregiving and talk about, issues that surround this. So the
Yep.
cultural aspect of this part of the world still is opening up.
okay. Well, this has been enlightening and helpful.
I do have a suggestion. I'm looking at a couple of other examples of mapping exercises, and mapping is hard. I mean, you can get the pins on the map, but it needs to be constantly updated. And Principles has a world map, which is it, it's got too many pins on it, and I don't know how accurate their pins are. But
Sure.
what I experienced recently was somebody reached out to me to say, look, are you still alive or are you still active? And I appreciated that. And the reason they were doing this recently, it turns out, is they've introduced a new layer to their map, which is recycling centers. So not just people who are able to print using Prusas, but also people or spaces that are taking in plastic in order to recycle it into printable filament. So that exercise was planned, strategized, and they reached out to as many pins on the map as
Could you
possible, I
send a
think.
link to that? We'd be
Yeah,
super
can you show us
interested.
the map?
Sure.
Particularly in
It's
recycling, we had a couple recycling vendors in Massachusetts that we used to work with, but they both went bankrupt during the pandemic. And so we found a couple that'll take our plastic, but we haven't invented their supply chain that it actually doesn't go to landfill. I'd be super interested.
That's actually something I'm working on completely differently. But Singapore, again, like you pointed out, tiny little place. It's a city state, and it's very easy to trace what happens to everybody's consumer waste. And Singapore incinerates and it converts as much of it into
And they're
electricity as
pretty good
possible.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but still, the amount of consumer plastic that gets actually recycled is 5.7%.
Even so.
Which is considered very good, but it's still not what most people think when you buy
And I
something that's
wonder,
made out of plastic.
like from an environmental engineering standpoint, when you run the metrics on like when you get energy out of it versus when you turn it back into a consumer product, like where's the actual supply chain impact is very interesting.
Yeah. So, okay, I've looked at the map and I see that you end up zooming down to a person in this particular case, at least. Here I am in Porto Novo. I don't even know what continent. I'm Lagos. Okay, and I click on a pin and I found out. So is it always is that what they link to, is a person?
So you can it's each of your you have to have a profile before you can put yourself on the pin, and you can decide how much information you want to provide there. You can put a picture up, or just your name or nothing.
But it's not the device or the story it's not the device, the model that goes on the map. It's the person who goes on the map.
Yes,
The account. Okay, got it.
where the printer is basically, because they're in the business of making printers. And if you look at the bottom left corner, there's a little settings button that lets you choose the filters.
Aha.
So they had the services used to be print on demand, show and tell, and now
Right.
they've added a new thing called 3D printing waste recycling. And if you select that filter, you'll find that the pins shrink down to a very small number.
Right. So I'm looking at show and tell, but it still brings me to a human, which I guess is the way it goes.
Yep.
It's really interesting. I need to play with this a little bit more. I hadn't seen their map feature.
Say that
It's
again.
relative.
I definitely want to explore this map feature a bit more. And I think there's a lot of parallels in all of these efforts. One of the ones that like I just keep thinking of as we go through this, like people come to e-NABLE to make a hand for a person and then discover open source assistive technology they can 3D print, right? And we want to make hands and then we realize we've got to design doorknobs. Or like, there's another way into solving that occupational therapy task.
Right.
And I wonder if like printing is very parallel where like we want to turn filament into new filament. And there's lots of engineering challenges there. But then like a company like Trex that makes benches, or like this red sculpture, like repurposing them into art projects. Like there's lots of other next life that the product can have.
And with plastics, I think that's the best thing for it. Otherwise, it winds up in the environment and turns into microplastics that gets into the animals, and then that gets into the food system, and then winds up in our bodies again. So,
and it destroys the oceans, which make the oxygen.
yes.
But the hook is filament recycling, right? That's what's in people's imagination. Like the hook is upper limb prostheses mechanical because that's in people's imagination. But it's a wedge to open up a broader conversation.
It is, and I think it's potentially quite inspiring in terms of not just the idea that you're doing something good with something that would be waste material, but also it's direct action. You are engaging people in doing something about the thing rather than just talking about it. So yeah, I mean, I could go off on a tangent here, but talking about the map issue, there's another link that I just shared in the chat, which is Braille Wrap. And that's a project that is kind of related to what we've been talking about. It's a machine that is open source design, and it uses Arduino based thing. So it's open source from the design of the box all the way down to the firmware that runs on the microcontroller and the software in between. And this project has its own map. And I think it's being pushed forward by somebody based in France. And the French team also went down to, I think, Nigeria and set up a bunch of workshops to create, to basically replicate the project. So the pins, again, this is what we were talking about, right? So the pins are controlled by the person who built the website. And if you look at Singapore, you'll see that our little makerspace shows up with a little URL.
I see it.
And the URL is a link tree, which is something that we use for almost everything. Like my name card has a little QR code which takes you to the link tree, and whenever we do little posters and handouts at events, we have a little QR code which takes you to the link tree, and the link tree has everything. It's got the Instagram feed, it's got links to projects, it's got links to photo albums, it's got links to everything. So the map that was put together as part of this Braille Wrap project, it was quite easy to just put one URL in there, and then it doesn't clutter up the map.
I'm noticing that on Linktree, I'll share my screen again. I can click on one of these things and it pops up and it plays without being logged into Instagram. And yet I thought we just decided that we were prevented from doing that.
No, single posts work.
Say what?
A single post works like that.
Well,
but so then the issue becomes you cannot scroll through a directory, right? You don't get the full experience of going to their page. You can link to each individual asset, but you can't get the whole scroll.
I'm solving my problem right now, which is that apparently Linktree. So now let me just see. So here's this. They have figured out how here's an incognito browser. Linktree is happy to show this. And here I am viewing his post through a incognito browser. So there is hope, at least for Instagram. How they do it, I think we don't know, right? And interesting, I see that Linktree is already providing. God, it's such a big world these days. Share, okay, and then you log in, but that's fair. So Linktree is doing the kind of thing I just talked about. Now, Saad, sorry. If I want to, if you don't mind, what's it take to create a Linktree thing? So first of all, I need to log in. I don't think I've ever logged in, but you never know. Right, I haven't. Try another way. Assad, can you walk us through,
Yeah.
share your screen and walk us through the process?
Sure. It's been a while. You need to enable share screen before I can do that, though.
Oh, right, okay. Um,
And I think that would work for any public post on
So,
Instagram that you have a direct link to.
Saad, I've made you a co-host,
yes,
so you
sir.
should be able to share.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Now I stop share and you do something.
Okay.
But the thing is, Ian, those were not public posts. Those are ones that Instagram said you have to log in to see this. Whereas Linktree has figured out how to expose it.
Yeah, I think it's just a direct link. I think that works for any public post that you have a direct link to. So the
I
technical
tried that.
problem would be the scroll back. You can't scroll back to it.
That I don't care about that. But what you said is not true. If you take a link to a direct link to one of Saad's posts and try to open it in an incognito browser, you'll be asked to log in. Okay, so hello, copy link. Now, I didn't do it that way. Okay.
Yeah. So I think Ian's right on this one. Because the ones with the circles on them,
Yeah.
those ones I think are probably wouldn't work if we did the incognito thing. But the posts, individual ones, I think these ones have direct links because these are the posts section of Instagram goes all the way back to like when Instagram was first created. All of these reels and stories, they're all new. They're all designed to be temporal. So you can only see a story for 24 hours before it disappears. And even if you are the one who uploaded it, you wouldn't be able to see it again. And so that
the implementation's even worse. So if you're in incognito here, if you open incognito and go to the same page you're on, we get John's user experience as expected. But
okay.
if you copy link and paste it into a fresh tab, so if you make an incognito tab, go directly to your Instagram page, and you try to click on a post, it won't let you. It'll say, please log in. But if you right click and say copy link and paste that in a tab, it will let you see the content that way.
Well, but that's
That solves your problem. That does what you need. You just can't click. You have to link it.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's all we did to create the Instagram embed in Linktree. So Linktree is basically exactly what it suggests. It's just a bunch of links,
Okay.
and we get to see, statistics of clicks and so on. But you're able to then choose all sorts of things that have already been integrated. So this is what Linktree offers as part of their integration. And we're using the free version, but if you get the paid version, then you get a lot more. But it's more than enough for what we need right now.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. And yet challenging. But Linktree has already done a lot of the work of finding the corridors into each of the platforms. Did they offer utility for authoring posts?
From through Linktree, no.
No. They say it gets born elsewhere, but once it's been born, we'll give you a centralized gallery, which is non-denominational, so to speak.
But Instagram has to provide that through an API before that's available to third-party platforms. So Instagram is very selective in what they provide. I think the limitations around not being able to create a post, even if you are using an Instagram on the web browser, it was a strategic decision to basically keep out bots and automated posts and things like that. But there's
Okay.
always a way around it.
Okay. Whew. Well, okay.
It's constantly chasing. It's going to be every time you think that you've got your head wrapped around this, something changes.
And then they change it. That's right.
But they do have an incentive not to break links, like you were saying. So anything you linked from, the link is usually consistent.
Well, as a matter of fact, yeah, probably the links that Linktree uses, they make it their business to have them be persistent. I've hit this in the past that the image links for even public Facebook posts are sort of random strings, and they change those random strings periodically, specifically, I think, in order to address this issue, so that they don't want you capturing their images. Wouldn't it be nice if we knew someone who actually had made a career of understanding all of these little niggles and technicalities and so on in the social media morass? It's designed to be a morass, and yet I want my slice to be friendly to mere mortals. You're not that person, right, son?
Well, the company, my company is just 4.5 people. And the half person is a part-timer. And we have our hands full with trying to keep up with just the small little projects that we take on. And our efforts are directed towards meaningful and appropriate technology. So the social media is secondary.
Sure.
We only read up on the thing that we need. And so LinkedIn is the one that my team is most proficient on. But yeah, I think anybody who is in a large company trying to do marketing would have to be well versed in how the platforms work. But they tend to be looking at it from the user's perspective and
Right.
maybe from the analytics perspective rather than technical capability. So yeah, a company like Linktree or somebody who's doing aggregation, I think the tech team behind that would be who you're looking for in this case.
What was the second thing you mentioned? You said Linktree, or maybe a company like
Somebody who does aggregation of links
aggregation.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Because Linktree is one of several. I think Bitly is the other one that comes to mind. There used to be a URL shortener, but they also now do link trees.
I didn't know that. That's good to know. I've used them a lot as a link shortener.
So
let me take a random survey of a non-random sample. Obviously, I am very taken by this notion that a big map to enable the future would be a good thing. But I might be wrong, or I might be barking up an impossible tree. So I'm asking for frank feedback.
well, I would suggest that you look at the people aspect of it. If you have one person to constantly do the checking and to make sure that, the links are, the pins on the map are still relevant.
Well, that's right.
How long would it take that one person to get the job done? And if we have a team of people to do this, then they probably only need to do it once every so often. So you do that like once every quarter or once every 6 months, and you would still offer, I think, a utility that is incredibly valuable.
All right, that's what I wanted to hear, but I was willing to hear the other. And you're right. One of the things we're trying to do is put together a system which can be maintained. That's one of our requirements. Well, this is great. I'll be sharing this recording with the people who are developing the big map, and it will raise some new issues. That's great.
And one of the cool things about Prusa is, right, those people can add all their own stuff without a central curation, but then you get like the data creep and it's not updated. If you can solve the people can add their own stuff and the verification stuff at the same time, that's like the magic, I think.
Right. Well,
Like Google Maps does this.
yes, and right. Google Maps does it at great expense and with great profit. That's not us. However, we clearly have this problem with the chapters map, but in principle, we can deal with that. Or if chapters want to be listed, and they do, with the possible exception of Saad, who's never gotten onto our map, then they will respond to an email every quarter saying, are you alive? And if they're alive and they have a Facebook page or an Instagram page or etc., then we can, this is the harder part, but we've made progress on it today. Then we capture that content, probably keeping a local copy so that if the source withers and dies, we're still covered. But this is what we have to think through.
So just two quick examples. I'm going to share my screen again,
Please.
and I think this will help for the discussion here. This is the map that Precious Plastic has been building, and it is a beautiful map. And it effectively narrows down to an individual, and the individual chooses what they want to share and to what extent. But again, there's a question of how relevant is the data and when was it last updated? We don't know. And so it comes back to, like, who's maintaining this. Similarly, and there's the Fab Lab network, which has grown significantly in the last few years. It's now close to 3,000, I think.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
It's brilliant. There's a lot that goes in. So if we look at Singapore as an example, I think it'll illustrate my problem with this map. It's the same problem that we've seen across all the other maps. If we look at this space, it's listed as active, but it's not. And I listed my map, my little makerspace on this map as well, but it doesn't appear here. So the Fab Lab network is also facing the same challenge that you are, and they don't have a single solution to this problem just yet, but the conversation is very similar to the one that you're also having.
Right.
One last thing I wanted to quickly mention here.
Please.
This came up in the discussion. This might be relevant to your tech teams. It's a JavaScript library called Leaflet, and this integrates with the OpenStreetMap, and it does have an accessible option to it, but it will need to be looked at from the development side.
Yes, I've actually I once upon a time I found it was actually a Python demo that generated a leaflet map that was very impressive. I think it was generated by ChatGPT. This is the world we're in right now. But Leaflet is very impressive. It's a quality map, and yet it runs in the browser. It's a local file. Okay.
Yeah, but the data points do have to come from a human being.
Sure.
I don't think we've got the GPT-ness to be able to handle.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, Saad, did you come here hoping to get anything, or because you've certainly given a lot, but before we say goodbye,
You know, I just wanted to sort of listen in and see what you guys were talking about. But I'm happy to share. And I did want to mention one thing in particular is that we've got a little bit of funding for in particular, the hand project.
yeah.
Because we've been doing all of these little things with, pen holders and handles for custom handles for users. Um, and at the same time, we were using the Phoenix hand for one or two individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but every time we introduce people to the nature of what we do, we also use the same Phoenix hand to demonstrate that, look, it can also be as complicated as a prosthetic, or it could be as simple as a pen holder. So we've been working on trying to get funding for the entire organization, but the Singapore government seems to have some very different ideas. So we broke it down into projects, and the one that came through was for the hands. So we've got funding now for the next 12 months, and we have to produce 24 prosthetic hands. So
Nice.
we've put out a call and a request for anybody who wants one to come forward, and we would facilitate the process.
Well, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And these will be Phoenix hands.
Anything from, the finger to
Sure.
to above the elbow even.
Right.
Where we've done yes, we've done the Phoenix hand. We've also done a Kuabu hand.
Yeah.
But we haven't done all the way to the shoulder yet.
Right. In the States, we have far too many makers relative to the number of people who want devices. In Singapore, is there a market for your devices? Are there people who want them?
So this is the biggest challenge. People are not aware that this option exists, and so a lot of my work is outreach and awareness. And so we don't know is the short answer to that. But we, through conversation and talking to social service agencies that help persons with disabilities, it's usually the conversation is around funding for an assistive device like an electric wheelchair. But that's the informal network that we've been talking to. So we're reaching out through that to see who will come forward. And I'm fairly sure, just gut feel here is that we should be able to get 24 without a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Even in this hour, it turns out there are recurring patterns, right? So and they tend to be the unsolved problems that you focus on in some ways, because the solved problems don't need solving. But the unsolved problems are an interesting side effect of these institutional structures. Like governments that don't quite understand the value of what you do, businesses who are actually not there to make life easy for the customers. They're there to make life profitable to the companies.
Yeah.
And here we are trying to fill the gaps.
Right.
I also wanted to say, you used the phrase meaningful and purposeful assistive technologies, I think you said.
Appropriate
That's like a
technologies.
well-practiced phrase. I resonated to it. And that's, of course, another one of these recurring patterns. this business of when you have your sessions at the library, typically there are people who want devices who come in, and then they meet with the volunteers, right? It's that kind of a sort of a workshop.
Yeah, and sometimes they have a specific device in mind, sometimes they don't. And often what we find is when they have something specific, it's usually something they've seen. So they saw it on Instagram or they saw it on TikTok, and then they're curious about it. And we engage them in conversation, and they suddenly realize, hang on, I don't really need this thing. And
Yeah.
we actively encourage people to question that,
Yeah.
to say, okay, fine, it looks nice and it works for that person that you saw on TikTok, but what do you really need this for? And then the story comes out, and it turns out what they really needed was,
Oh,
I don't know, cable tie.
Right. But they weren't aware that they could solve the problem with the cable ties. So that's really great.
Yeah, and it
Uh,
often depends on, the volunteer who's there, right? If the idea occurs to that person, then it's introduced. But that's the organic nature of a makerspace. You never know what you're going to get because you never know who's going to be there. And it works both ways. So if we have the regularity of our sessions is sort of the secret sauce. If you come one Sunday and you don't quite get what you were looking for, you're invited to come back another Sunday, and then
Sure.
you might have a different experience. So we're starting to see that now. It seems to be catching on, because we've only been doing this for now about a year, and the patterns now seem to be settling in. So yeah, still a lot of work to be done. We seem to be challenging quite a few of these established narratives. But it's very motivating to see that we're not alone in this.
Yeah.
There are other people around the planet who are also doing similar work and are similarly motivated. So I think that's encouraging.
It's certainly encouraging to me.
Works
Sarah,
both ways.
actually, Saad, would you be willing to have Sarah feature your makerspace and all the things we've learned from you today in one of her monthly updates where she has a feature story?
Absolutely, yes. And there's a little video on our link tree, which is a frequently asked questions section. That might be a good place to start. But yeah, if there's anything that you want me to add, do let me know, and I'm happy to provide.
That's great. And Sarah,
Great, Sod.
does that make sense?
Thank you. I'll be in touch.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'd say our work is done here. I want to thank you for participating in my continuing education program. I've learned a lot. And I hope you'll come back. And by the way, Saad, um, Ian and I preside over these chapter leaders meetings, but this is almost the only heavy involvement I have with e-NABLE these days, except for this map project, which has synergies with my main focus these days, which is eco-restoration, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really good time for regional leaders like you, especially ones who've got who are fluent in the common denominator language, even though it's no better than any other language, to help us shape the next version of e-NABLE. As you can see, we have some funding. It's one of those moments we're trying to figure it out. But you're much more in the trenches and involved these days than the original leaders who are, working on other things as well. So just a word of thanks and encouragement. And, you should feel free. I know you're busy, but let me say again, we actually have 6 figures in the bank right now, and we're trying to figure out how to make good use of it. So if you have any thoughts, it's a good time to share them.
I'll keep that in mind for sure, and it definitely does help. But yeah, it's like you said, the bandwidth of what I'm trying to do is a little bit hard to come by. But I have my eye on. I'll keep an eye out for somebody who might be able to pick up on what you've offered and maybe turn that into something useful.
That's great. Okay. Ian, I think I sucked a lot of the air out of the room. Have I
No, this
prevented?
was great. I learned a lot. And I just
Yeah.
created a whole thread with my team to send all these maps to. We're really into maps now, just as a digital scholarship topic.
Huh.
So thank you for this. This was a useful conversation.
Well, Ian, this is all I do apparently. Is there a synergy that we should explore between what you're doing with digital maps and this project that we're initiating?
Like we're a university, our major output is students, whether that's like intern or a course project. I think we have people interested in maps, which we've never really talked about.
Okay. Well, I think I also wrote to you recently because of your board
Our
inter.
board fellows, like our nonprofit work. Yeah, so we should talk because we probably have student energy we could throw at some of these things.
Okay, we should talk, and we will. All right.
So
Thank
wonderful
you.
to meet you. Thank you
Hello,
for so much
Jonathan.
today.
When did Jonathan emerge here? How long has he been here?
Yeah, I've been here a while.
Well, hello, Jonathan.
Hi,
Let
guys.
me be the last to introduce you to Sod and say, since there was no video, I just didn't realize you were here. This meeting is coming to an end, but I hope to see you at the next one.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll hang around. I'm just here most of
All
the
right.
time.
Okay, that's great.